All right, all of you wonderful boys and girls, men and women, if you are watching or listening to this podcast, you are the resistance. Welcome to Mission Critical Podcast, episode 48. This is part 2. This is our War Room week. We are your hosts. I'm Mark, and then over there,
Redbeard.
And we're going to have a couple guests popping in and out here tonight, so bear with us. Excuse me. We're just going to jump right into the heart of the matter because one of our guests is already here and only has about 5 or 10 minutes. So without further ado, this is the War Room week. Jeremy, actually, why don't you just remind everybody our new format, what this week is. And then I'm going to bring David in while you're doing
that. Real quick, the War Room week is going to focus around, foreign issues, things that involve us as it relates to the international realm, and it can deal with some domestic issues, but predominantly it's going to be geopolitics, any conflicts, or anything that's concerning us in the international realm. So,
right on. Hey, so I'm going to give the preface for what we're going to kind of do here tonight, and then following the format that we used last week, we're going to stick with that. And we've got DB here, and like I said, it's Friday. We just appreciate anybody who's here watching us and the men and women who can join us, taking the time away from their lives, as DB will kind of point out in a second. You can tell he's hanging out in his car in a rainstorm. It looks like
just a stoic look too.
Yeah, totally. Bad. I actually really like that hat though. It's a cool skull beanie.
Yeah.
But DB, why don't we actually just introduce yourself real quickly and give us a kind of a time hack, and then I'll get into what the kind of conversation for tonight, sir.
All right. Well, hi, my name's David. Been on the show many times. Former CIA officer, worked with Mark, did the thing, served the country. And now I basically am a dad waiting for my kid to get out of the gym right now. And I'm wearing his high school football, baseball, future high school football, baseball beanie. So
nice.
That's in a nutshell.
It's pretty badass. And we're really lucky to have DB here tonight. Hopefully we'll get Patrick. Patrick is also a guest who's been on a couple times. He was on Tuesday's podcast live stream. Unclear if he'll be able to make it tonight. We'll see, right? But jumping right into it, kind of following what we were discussing on Tuesday. And it's interesting, as we're putting the show together, you're kind of looking at new and, relevant articles of things that have transpired. And I don't know, obviously I can't speak for Redbeard or DB, and I can't clearly speak for any of you great men and women, but holy shit, it's hard to even keep up with this anymore. Like trying to come up with what are the main topics? There's so much information. We're being inundated with so much information. It's difficult to stay on top of this. And if you're someone like Dave, right, DB, and you've got a family and kids and they're engaged in sports, how in the hell can you even stay on top of this, right? So DB, you got a little something you want to say to that real quickly?
Oh, it's impossible. Is one of the things I do follow a lot is foreign affairs for basically the same reasons. That's what we used to do. And there's so much going on a large scale, so many big topics from Ukraine to the Middle East, to the border, to all these things. It's hard to be, dare I say, a subject matter expert on hardly anything anymore, even though our background is in those places, because I'm being pulled in a million different directions. I have, competing priorities, and it's hard to say that those things aren't important, but like I said, I'm waiting for my kid to get out of the gym. There's only so much I could do,
Right.
So,
and I think that's the same for everyone. So then let's just jump right into it. And let me just throw, so if you kind of see the format, Redbeard came up with a good format. I didn't execute it very well last week. I think we're doing better this week. This is the War Room week. Next week, we'll talk about next week when we get there. Redbeard and I talked, but he's got another great idea. But jumping into it, so as kind of DB said, and as we're alluding to, there's so many events that are taking place, and the vast majority of these events by themselves are of such singular nature that we should be focused on that.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not. How can we? So what we're going to try to do here is, like we did on Tuesday, is review some of that. And I'm going to start it off by simply asking, what the hell is going on? WTF, right? What is really going on? It seems that, is there like a pole shift going to happen? Is like the magnetism of the earth going to flip? Do we have evidence that Martians are about to invade us, or that there's going to be a sudden catastrophe like a meteor strike, or or an outbreak of zombie apocalypse, World War Z type of shit? Something seems to be going on. It's either that, or there are some guilty ass people in the world, not just our country, but leadership worldwide, who are clearly, desperately trying to cover their tracks. Right. And on that note, we'll just kind of jump right into it right there. Well, first off, agree, disagree, Redbeard, DB, and you guys agree? Do you agree or disagree with that statement right there?
I agree. I mean, world's on fire. The evidence is everywhere. We're not even just seeing smoke anymore. It's actual flames everywhere. So yeah, something's happening. Something's going on. Maybe it's a coincidence that it's all blowing up all at once, or whatever, but it's happening. We see it.
I'll just say, when you start to see the more prominent individuals within our society start to spend millions of dollars on bunkers and stuff like that, it may be a sign that we should try and figure our things out. I mean, obviously their self-preservation mode kicked in a little bit hard, so I want to know why.
Yeah, and because these, as we've mentioned in the past, these are the people who are not going to volunteer to go on the front lines. They're not the ones doing this. So, to DB's point, the world's on fire. Like, clearly people in wealthy circles, whether that's the World Economic Forum type of people, or the George Soroses in the world, but something is going on, and they're scrambling for a reason. What it is, I don't know. And if you got the answer, leave a comment, in the live chat, or, after you watch this video on demand. But clearly something is going on. And as DB pointed out, now I'm going to kind of get into it. So both Redbeard and DB, just give me a quick second. Let me just kind of bring some stuff up here. Excuse me. So in the first point, as DB was saying, all right, let me just bring that up there. And I am getting better. I've got to actually bring it into one tab, and then I got to come all the way back over here to see what we're looking at to make sure it's going on. But so I won't even bring this one up full scale. The headline says it all, right? So with everything going on, we have this taking place in a part of the world where no one's even really talking about the Houthis.
I'll be right back, Mark.
Right on. But no one's really talking about the Houthis, the Red Sea, who's supporting them, the effects it's having on international shipping. So now DB Redbeard knows the show notes. So, but I just wanted to bring that up first. So before we start asking the questions, so that was one I wanted to present. And here we go. So, and then if you go into the Ukrainian aspect of what's going on over there, and there's a couple different articles that pretty much say the same thing. It's talking about Macron speaking openly and publicly about putting French forces in Ukraine. And maybe that is where I'll kind of just give it a quick little pause, come back to us. DB. So first and foremost, we've got Iran is saber rattling. And then we've got Macron. Actually, give me one more second. I'm going to stop sharing that. I'm just going to bring up the other Macron article because he kind of deserves this. And then, it's kind of Macron, but it's the Dutch, which this actually kind of struck me. So it struck me as interesting because the Dutch are not on board with a lot of things that are going on in the EU right now. And then, so I don't think it's the people, just like in France. There are people in France who are rebelling or rioting or protesting against Macron's statements. And you have the Dutch who led the way with the whole farmer and the boycotts and shutting down roads. Then so to hear that the Dutch are the lone supporters to Macron's EU boots on the ground was surprising to me. So right there, now we got Redbeard back. I'll stop sharing this and let's just kind of bring it over to DB priority because, you got to leave here in a little bit. Excuse me, fellas. But DB, agree with that? Disagree? So we had two things there. Iran is basically Hezbollah, right? So that's now we're talking in the Lebanon, like, hey, if Israel continues to do this, you need to start ramping up attacks. Then we've got international leaders, over in the EU saying, hey, we probably need to put our soldiers, not his son, not his daughter, not himself, the people, the serfs underneath him have to go and fight and potentially die in Ukraine. And no one's really actually ever explained that. And then this is where I'll shut up. But Redbeard and I were talking about this. It's of interest to me that all the way back in the Obama era, they loved Russia and they hated Ukraine. And now suddenly it's the other way around. So what really is at foot here? What's the game at play? DB, take that and go wherever you want to go with that. Agree, disagree, or add to it as you see fit.
Well, one with Iran, I mean, I think that one's kind of a no-brainer for them to say, like, hey, you guys are next, right? They're trying to rally Hezbollah. Just basically say, if Israel continues into more southern Gaza, then you guys are next. And I guess that's their way of not saying a premeditated, like, or not premeditated, but, like Hezbollah, you got to strike Israel before they strike you. And I think that's kind of where they're going with that, trying to get Israel to maybe back off. I don't know. But I mean, I see it in multiple ways, at least objectively. I could see why Iran would be making such claims. So, that seems to make sense to me, that Iran and Hezbollah are just trying to ramp up and say, hey, dude, if Israel's going crazy here, it's going to become bad for you now. So be ready, maybe strike first. So I see that happening.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I mean, Macron, I'm torn on this issue because as long as it's EU, see, NATO's us, right? NATO's the United States with a bunch of dudes who kind of participate. It's our money, it's our troops, it's our funding, and then everybody else contributes on whatever minor scale. So I hate the idea that NATO would be engaging in a potential conflict that the United States is going to have to wage. But Macron and the EU, I mean, this war is on the EU's, doorstep. This is their problem. I'm not saying they should contribute, because what happens when France sends in troops under the EU concept, but they get attacked? Is that an attack on NATO? Like, is Russia attacking France perhaps attacking the EU, or does that draw us into whatever the article is for NATO? And I think that gets complicated, but that's why I'm like kind of torn. This is a strictly a EU problem. I hate to interject what I think the EU should do, because it has nothing to do with us, has nothing to do with me. So if France wants to go to war with Russia, of course, NATO complicates that. But, that's a whole different scenario. And I'd like to at least, again, objectively ponder, what can they do? What can they say that gives them some autonomy as the EU versus NATO, as an individual country of France, as opposed to EU itself? So it's a fascinating, conundrum that I think Europe's going to find themselves in, because Russia's there, they're making progress, and Europe's going to have to make a decision one way or another. Do they defend themselves as Europe? Because NATO's already said we're not defending Ukraine as NATO, because Ukraine's not part of NATO. I don't know. Lots of fascinating things, in my opinion, but.
So just a slight interjection before we bring it over to Redbeard for his agree, disagree. But just to add to it, go back to our Tuesday podcast when, one of our articles was the head of NATO, pretty much just coming out and saying that Ukraine will, like, it was a done deal. Like, the votes have already been cast, even though the election hasn't, been held yet, but the votes have been cast and Ukraine will be NATO. And that is kind of scary in itself on a couple different levels. So, I really appreciate what you're saying right there. But is this an EU problem? Is this a NATO problem? Is this just a problem between the people of that region, whether it's the Donbass or wherever it is? Are they ethnically Russians? Are they Ukrainian? Maybe it's not even an EU problem. I mean, but it seems to me that we're not willing to go to the table and try to ask those questions. Or if you do ask those questions, you're being called an apologist for a Putin or a Russia folk. It's just like, It's ridiculous. We're Americans. You know, no offense to anybody else in the rest of the world watching this, but we're Americans. I have a right to ask these questions. Matter of fact, I think Redbeard might back me up on this, though this isn't the question, Redbeard. I would actually argue that our forefathers would have stated that it was my moral and civic duty to ask these questions. All right,
Here,
Redbeard, let's come over to you, though.
I gotta
ahead,
go.
Dude.
I have like seconds.
Yep.
But these conflicts between NATO and EU and all of this kind of reminds me of maybe World War I, where there's this web of alliances and treaties and all of these, you know, internal conflicts that everybody had to go to war, even if it wasn't in the best interest of any certain individual states. But because of the entanglements and the web of those treaties and alliances, it dragged literally the whole world into, well, the, you know, that part of the world at least.
Well, no, that World War I was the first global war. It drugged pretty much every, you know, Japan. Like everybody forgets about this. Japan fought on the side of, you know, our side, if you want to call it, in World War I. I mean, they fought the Russians, and so there was all kinds of weird stuff going on in there. But
jump out. That was my final thought. Got to get driving. Man. Here's the kid.
hey, let give him a, if he wants to do a cameo, let's just see what his guns are. What did you got?
Kevin, say hi to everybody.
Hi.
Hey, do you even remember me? I bet you don't. I tied you to a chair in a bar once. Don't ever say that.
Belt. With my belt.
Why?
All right.
It was a bar stool, and we needed you to be able to sit still.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, we drank beer and arm wrestled.
Yeah, that's true. We were arm wrestling.
We were arm wrestling. Yep.
But hey, I gotta go.
All right.
It's been fun.
All right. Hey, Camden, just really quickly, Camden, you're a rock star. I've seen a bunch of your clips. Your dad shares that stuff. Keep kicking ass. You're a good man, Charlie Brown. Keep it up. DB, thank you, sir. We'll catch you on the next one.
Later, guys.
Thanks, man.
Later. Thanks, man.
That's fantastic. By the way.
That was awesome, especially having this kid there. I haven't seen this kid in, geez, the crime, and it's been probably like 10 years now. 12 years, something like that. Dang. All right. So, but back on that, and that was timing was perfect. So coming back over to you, Redbeard, agree, disagree. So back on track. We were talking about, you know, so you've got Iran issuing comments to Hezbollah, you know, be prepared, get ready to do stuff. Could be saber rattling, as DB pointed out. But then it was Macron's inflammatory comments, and then the Dutch saying, yeah, we're willing to put boots on the ground too. Agree, disagree? Thoughts on that right there?
Yeah. So I'm just going to say real quick on the Iran Hezbollah thing. Like, I do agree with David on the fact that, like, I can objectively kind of understand why they would be saying what they say, right? Like, I think and that's the thing, is we do have to objectively look at a lot of these things, because it's very easy to get wrapped up into our own bias. So I agree with him on that. I think that what he said and kind of his own personal opinion assessment, it made sense to me. As for Macron and the Dutch, it's a very interesting situation. You had brought up, you know, and something that we talked about earlier, which was, you know, during the Obama era. I do find it very interesting that not only just our news outlets, but a lot of different news outlets had mentioned way back when, around the time of the Maidan coup, and even before that, around 2008, you know, that these elements that were arising within Ukraine, most particularly the militants and the militias and stuff like that, they were called Nazis, they were called fascists, they were called very hard right, almost separatists, if you will. And you know, and it's interesting because for a time, the Ukrainian government had been working to try and deal with these people, and eventually they found that the way to kind of deal with them after a while was to integrate them to some degree under the government, so they could control them a little bit more. So this creates a very interesting thing. And why do I go back and talk about that? Because you're now starting to see these countries that, ever since Russia did the the full-on invasion and they took the steps that they've taken now, it's very interesting that a lot of these people's opinions within these major countries have not only completely flipped, but now that they seem to just be whimsically wanting to wade into a war that, you know, years ago they were saying was almost justified in the defense of the Donbass and specifically the Donetsk and Lugansk people, right? So, you know, it's very confusing. And at the same time, like, I just don't think that Macron and the Dutch and a lot of people really fundamentally understand what they're asking for. I mean, this isn't just going to be um, something that's going to be of a small scale. Like David said, you know, is this going to just simply concern the EU, or would it invariably bring, I believe it's called an Article 5 via NATO if the French were to get attacked or the Dutch were to get attacked? I mean, it seems very, very, I don't want to say short-sighted, but it seems very ignorant. You're muted, Mark.
You know, I almost need to have like a little ticker where just like in baseball, where
Yeah.
you have a K for a strike, you know, for a strikeout.
Yep.
I get a like a finger or an M for how many times Mark forgets to unmute himself
Yeah.
during the course of a podcast.
Yeah.
But on the point you were just raising right there, and I wonder how many people are really taking that step back and taking that into consideration. You know, this isn't just saber rattling, and I'm glad you brought up Article 5. I mean, and this goes into something you've talked about numerous times, and as our forefathers did. You know, some pretty smart guys, entangling alliances.
Yep.
Is this really our issue? Is this a NATO issue? Because it seems to me, going back to like, why is this happening? Is there like, are we about to get hit by a meteor, invaded by Martians? You know, like the pole shift. What is happening, and why this headlong rush into a potential nuclear war? Like, it doesn't seem, you know, and no, David brought up World War I, and if anyone's watching, if you're a scholar, World War I, you know, go and look at the Schlieffen Plan and all the diplomacy, and that's generally used to try to explain how people just fell into a conflict that, had there been other remedies or other channels, maybe diplomacy could have won and maybe the war could have been avoided. But unfortunately, a series event just sucked people into it. Doesn't it, Redbeard? Agree or disagree? Doesn't it kind of seem like people are trying to do that? They're trying to create an environment in which we will be forced to have to do X, Y, and Z, regardless of whether we as the people want to do it or not. It's almost like we're being presented with a fait accompli. Like, nope, there it is. You're just going to have to deal with it, whether you like it or not. Agree or disagree with that, Redbeard?
Yeah, no, I honestly, I don't feel like it's that far afield of something that would be within the realm of possibility. And the reason I say that is because, you know, it's like, just evaluate for one moment. I would ask people just to step back and evaluate. Look at how many people around the world have gotten a very sour taste in their mouths as it pertains to NATO, because they're starting to realize, especially some of these smaller countries, like, oh, like, we can't afford to send this gear or this aid or whatever it is. We can't afford to even expend the people to go on some of the training endeavors or to fulfill some of the obligations that NATO requires. And as a result, if they don't do that, then they get a stern talking to by NATO, and they're told, oh, well, if you don't do this, then, you know, I guess, you know, we're going to kind of withhold this, or we're going to strong arm you into doing this, or we're going to do this, or, you know, and we have to look at this like, anytime you become a part of an organization like NATO, and I would even argue perhaps the EU, or as some people refer to it, the EU Commonwealth, you're subjecting a portion of your nation's sovereignty, which is a very, very precarious thing, because now you are at the whims of what the leading powers within those organizations want you to do. And therefore, by way, if they decide they want to go to war, even if you oppose that war, even if you don't march to war with them, because you're a part of that organization, they will find a way economically and otherwise to make your life a living hell. And So I do believe that, yeah, it might be a different way in some ways, but it's very similar to World War One, except the EU and NATO have a little bit more leverage in being able to strong arm, especially smaller countries. So it's not outside the realm of reason, I think, to expect something like that to happen. That's just my opinion, and so I want to leave it at that.
Well, and for the first time, you actually had somebody say that you made an excellent point. So remember this day, the 1st of March,
thank you. Learn me something.
Yeah,
I appreciate
right there. Yeah, yeah. So that just popped in. All right. So okay, but now kind of going into the next, well, I guess the other side or the next aspect of this portion of tonight, right here. So you've got the FAFO aspect here. Like how many times, to your point, you're like, okay, we're doing this, and maybe it is, we're trying to we're being set up, and a fait accompli is being created that sucks us in, whether the general population is opposed to it or not. But how many times, like when you hear a rattlesnake shaking, or if you see a buck deer snorting and foot stomping, or a grizzly bear doing bluff charges, how many times do you need a warning before you take a step back and said, hey, maybe I should stop poking this thing, right? Maybe I should stop. Maybe I should take a step back and say, well, is there anything that I'm doing that's creating this environment, or that's making it, even worse? And again, we're just looking at the headline here. I just brought up an article, and I apologize. I should start doing this in case somebody's listening to this on Spotify. So the article is Putin issues, and then in parentheses, another World War III warning, put Western troops in Ukraine and get global nuclear war in return. I guarantee there's people in the big think tanks, and even back where I used to work, who are trying to ascertain whether this is bravado, whether this is political posturing, grandstanding. But at some point in time, if you're really understanding your adversary, and if you're really taking a look at the scenario, what's going on the ground, even if you think he's bluffing, and you're like, oh, okay, I'll give it a 10% probability he's telling the truth. Is this the hill that we are willing to die in a nuclear exchange over? Like, is it, in other words, like, what's the cost benefit analysis here? And here is, again, and it could be propaganda. It could be, chest, saber rattling, chest stomp, beating, whatever. But it's also your adversary saying, hey, look, I'm putting up with you guys, your intelligence organizations being in those countries. I'm putting up with your military being there. I'm putting up with you guys supplying them with the weapons of war to drag this out. It's resulting in more misery and deaths. And I'm not saying that makes Putin correct. I'm not, but more people are dying. At the longer this drags on, more people are dying. And the longer that drags on, and we get idiots like Macron making these statements, and and Lindsey Graham's, and and Mitch McConnell's, well, we're inching one step closer to an actual conflict that no one will be able to escape. And so Redbeard, just right there, agree, disagree with what I just said? Do you see it from a different perspective? What are your thoughts, sir?
Well, I want to first start out what I would like to say with a quote by Washington, and he says, "It is our true policy to steer clear of permanent alliance with any portion of the foreign world," and this was something that our founders ardently felt was important. Entangling alliances and things of that nature were evaluated and viewed as being detrimental to us as a country. It's not saying you couldn't have treaties. It's not saying you couldn't have diplomatic relations, but rather to normalize relations, even diplomatically and economically, with your enemies, because that ultimately is how you can quell those things. Now, that being said,
and I apologize, but as you were saying it, just a different article, but that was the perfect time, because I think this highlights the point you're making right there. So we've got Austin saying that if Ukraine is defeated, NATO will be at war with Russia. So to your point right there, like, well, how does that make any sense? I don't see the logical connection that if Ukraine is defeated, therefore America, NATO writ large has to go with war to Russia. I'm not seeing that 2 + 2 = 4 type of equation. And your point, I think, really emphasized that. Yeah, we've got
And
really smart
yeah,
people who said this is exactly why we don't do this kind of shit.
right. And it becomes problematic in this way, to where I don't think people truly do understand the point that we're at right now. Just my opinion, and somebody who's looked at our previous history in dealing with Russia and other adversary or perceived adversaries, I should say, around the world. Um, I think we're at almost a more precarious position now than we were almost during the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis. And the reason for that is because on our side, we have people that still really, really want this to happen. They're not even trying to. They're not even trying to back away from conflict. They literally want conflict to happen. They're not even disagreeable. We just saw Austin that is like, no, like this is going to be an inevitable end. Well, if that's an inevitable end, then I have to ask you, what do you think that the reward's going to be? Because we all know that, there's steps of escalation. We've seen this happen between Russia and Ukraine. And you don't think that Russia's not willing to escalate? They have already. They've shown us multiple times that they are capable of doing that in Ukraine. And if they face a power that is, considered a near peer war, then you don't think that they wouldn't feel threatened to some degree, to at least use limited use or like smaller tactical nuclear weapons? I mean, they have clearly set out the conditions for what those uses are. You're muted, Mark.
That's the second time.
Yep.
Actually, though, with the computer being up a little higher, let me just do. I actually will be able to catch that now, because now I actually can see a little warning that comes on and says, "Hey, knucklehead, your mic is still muted." Hey, Mark, your mic. Hey, Mark, your mic. No, I'm not Mike. I'm Mark. Hey, but on that point, you and I talked about this kind of in detail, earlier in the week. Maybe let's just throw this out there for people.
Yeah.
So we're sitting here talking about these warnings and what's taking place, and we're focusing on Russia, Ukraine. I mean, let's just be honest. Right now, that is the hotspot, right? What's going on, with Israel right now, and Hamas and Hezbollah, Iran, the Houthis in the Red Sea. Yeah, that's problematic as well, right? We should have an eye focused on that. China, always a threat, and we should always have both eyes focused on that. But in the right here, right now, to your point, I don't know if everyone quite understands. Like a nuclear exchange doesn't have to be, the Terminator, end of the world type of thing, Skynet, it could also just be on the tactical side. And the where we are, and I'm not even 100% sure of exactly where we are now, but from my knowledge, my background, the ability to use a tactical nuclear weapon to destroy a division or a brigade size element, or to completely shut down a part of the terrain that's very like if you're moving your motorized forces through it, you're going to be moving through this type of pass or this type of open terrain. Well, if I drop a tactical nuclear weapon in there, now you're going to have to move through in an irradiated area. It's going to cause you to maneuver differently, and it might cause you to maneuver into one of my kill zones where I want you to go, or I just might wipe out. There's your battalion or your brigade or your division, and you're poised on completing an enclosure that's going to be really difficult for me to fight back from. Like, think of Stalingrad in World War II with the Germans, right? Well, why not a tactical nuclear weapon? And Redbeard, agree, disagree? Two questions here. Do you think Russia could use a tactical nuclear weapon? And then that's agree, disagree. And then the second question is, what do you think NATO is going to do? That's not an agree, disagree. How do you think NATO is going to respond if somebody uses, and don't forget, everybody, Ukraine used to have part of the Russian nuclear arsenal. That was back in the day. Did some of that stuff get left behind? Did somebody steal some fissile material or something? I mean, I don't know. Redbeard?
Well, so I'll say this much. Russia has clearly defined what their red line would be for the use of nuclear weapons. And they have clearly stated that if they feel that their country, their nation, their people are facing existential attack, like something that would basically they perceive as going to obliterate their people, they are going to use all means necessary up to and including nuclear weapons to defend their country. And, you know, to some degree, I would imagine that a country, regardless of whether it's Russia or not, would be willing to do what they can to preserve their own people, right? So, and there's a lot more to it. I don't just want people to take that as everything. They have outlined it. It is something you can look up because there's been numerous articles written about it. But look it up and see like what they actually, the full fleshed out thing, because I think that will give some clarity to it. Now,
and I just want to add one point to that. And I saw this. It's somebody's infographic. It was really well done. Didn't have a chance to get it up here for tonight in time. Again, go back to the beginning of the show. There's so much information just that's already taken place since Tuesday. It's hard to stay on track of it. But it shows a map of Europe, and it's showing all the new NATO countries by the years and you just see this, you know, moving and encroaching. So I just keep coming back to, and I'm not an apologist for Russia. I spent, you know, my formative years, you know, over, you know, in Germany in the military, going to the Fulda Gap and saying, yeah, this is where my bones will be interned for the rest of however long this planet has to live, because there's no way I'm coming up here and living through this. We're going to all be dead. We're all going to be dead. The Fulda Gap, that was a big thing back then. And some of it may have been in a nuclear or, you know, a biological or a chemical type of event, you know, so pretty horrible. So, but as you see this map, I mean, to Redbeard, to your point, it would be the same thing if you just saw all the red wave coming through South America into Central America, and all the countries just keep falling. And then the next thing, you know, it's communism all the way up to our southern border, and then it's communism on our northern border. How would we respond to that? So again, I'm not apologizing for Russia. I'm not excusing their actions or any of that. I'm just simply saying, as human beings, you know, this isn't even really empathy. It's the ability to take a step back and say, how would we respond if that was going on if that was taking place along our borders? And I'm doing that for a reason, because, well, I mean, you could make an argument that is happening on our borders right now. Redbeard, comments on that? Agree, disagree, or whatever you want to go, and then I'm going to kind of bring it back to the slides.
Yep. Yeah. And I think just to kind of round off my point, I kind of wanted to phase, you know, that point that you and I kind of both made, like, okay, well, how would you feel if people are encroaching? I think that does factor into the NATO response, right? Because self-preservation is a very strong driver of people's actions. You know, when we look at this whole thing, you don't have to be for or against Russia to objectively look at certain things. You don't have to be for or against Ukraine to objectively look at certain things. One question I do have, and I think, I don't know if it's really going to help provide some type of an answer, but it does perhaps provide a little insight. I think when it comes to NATO, I think the people in NATO, you know, the respective citizens of each country, I don't genuinely feel that their governments are properly representing them as our government is properly representing us, because I think there's a lot of issues with our government and many other governments. That being said, I think there's an unpredictability factor in the fact that years ago we were willing to acknowledge history, you know, history of the area as it pertained to that which was going on between Russia and Ukraine, and the history that, you know, whether you like them or not, that Putin kind of brought up. I mean, there's over 1,000 years of history, and it's all very contextually relevant to what's going on today. And then all of a sudden, you know, 2022 comes around, and it's like everybody forgets the history because it doesn't support what the popular thing is. And just because you want to forget what the history is doesn't mean that history doesn't exist. So if you have countries or leadership within these leadership in these countries that all of a sudden just decide to forget history and don't want to contextually include that history in their decision making, then I think what you have is a very impulsive, impotent childlike form of leadership as it pertains to NATO, and one that very much is on the pathway to wanting to start a war as opposed to get away from war. So I don't know if that really made too much sense, but I'm trying to phrase it in the realm of NATO's all over.
I think you just you did it, and this comment from Zulu Inc. Is to your point. I mean, you know, it's in the form of a question. Don't the Russians have regional security concerns as well? You're damn right. I mean, I think that was the point you're just trying to make. Is again, it isn't empathy per se, but the ability to take a step back and say, "Hang on a second. You know, how would we view this? How would we look at that?" And going all the way back to the beginning of the podcast, something's not right. You know. Again, I don't know how to explain what's going on. Is it a Martian invasion? Is it an impending, asteroid strike? Is it a magnetic shift of the poles? Whatever it is, people are freaking out. And I'll get back to it. We'll kind of bring it at the end, but I believe I've kind of already said it. I think it's the rats trying to figure out how to save their skin, and they're willing to sell me, you, our families, our brothers and sisters. They don't give a shit if we go to war and die, because then none of them are going to do it, right? And I'll come back to that. I don't know if I know BCP is going to join us at some point, but not 100% sure if we'll bring this up. But he had a pretty good insight onto or as to maybe why some of this is happening. And if he is able to join us here in a bit, we'll do that. But before we go back, let me just bring up
that was a great question, by the way. Yeah,
it totally was. Yeah, of course they have national security concerns, just like or regional.
And again, on point there, I mean, it goes without saying, we can't condemn people for acting the same way we did. Like it's a natural reaction when you have people that have highly destructive weapons sitting off of off of our shores, right? Like it's a no-brainer, dude. Like again, that realm of self-preservation really hits hard when perspective is brought to, in
a civilized society, a civilized world, a civilized nation. And I've brought this up before, just to this whole point, because we can sit there and talk about, well, if the Russians park missiles in Cuba, and if we do this in Ukraine, and that might not really resonate with some people, as opposed to saying, well, what if somebody kicks in your door and comes into your house and wants to steal all your shit and kill you, right? So to the point, Zulu Inc. and what you were making there is where, and I've said this in the past, in it's different by state, but in Minnesota, if you're going to use lethal force, one of the, God, honestly, I don't even know how true this would be anymore, because they're just going to throw you in jail because you actually defended yourself or you believe in the Constitution. But you have to be an innocent party. That is one of the legal requirements. I can't go and pick a fight with Redbeard, and then I'm threatening Redbeard with violence and all kinds of stuff. He pulls a knife to defend himself, and then I shoot him. I'm still going to go to jail because I picked that fight. I wasn't an innocent party. And I think that's really kind of the point that Zulu Inc., yourself, Redbeard, and I was trying to flesh out and draw out from people was exactly that. It's like, hey, man, you have to be an innocent party.
Right.
All right. Now, I want to bring in one thing along these same lines. Give me a second here. And hopefully I didn't screw up. No, I don't think I did. All right. As I'm learning how I have to do these tabs and how it's displayed in the in the software. So I'm getting a little better, but here we go. And I think this is kind of worth mentioning, as we're kind of maybe tying up a little bit of the Russian-Ukraine conflict right now, is simply this right here. And I'm going to bring it. So right now I can't see you guys. I'm going to bring it back. Let me just kind of do this. And I'm just going to come back over so I can see the screen. I don't think I need to bring this full screen, but basically this is an article that's talking about it's 2 years after the start of the SMO, which is the special military operation. That's what the Russians are calling their invasion of Ukraine. So the title, and it's by this guy named Escobar. He actually has written some pretty good pieces. 2 years after the start of the SMO, the West is totally paralyzed. I don't think we're going to start putting these articles in the show notes. I'm not going to bring this up too much, But the
Yep.
point is, and Redbeard, you and I have had this conversation before, so this
Yeah.
isn't really a agree or disagree question. Well, maybe it is agree
Yeah.
or disagree, but it's the same thing with Trump. And I don't care if you're for Trump or against Trump, but it's of interest to me how the arguments are always, well, he's a bumbling idiot, and then he's a mastermind that's doing this. The Russians are this, and then on the other hand, they're these. Which one is it, man?
Yeah.
So that right there always
Yeah.
causes me pause, and that's why I brought this article up. It's like,
Yeah.
here we are. Like, okay, I thought these guys were retards. I thought these guys were like the worst thing in the world. And Redbeard and I have had our own personal conversations. I'll just
Yeah.
say this quickly, and I'll give it back over to Redbeard. I see some of the videos, and I have no idea what the hell's going on in that theater, because that is nothing. Like, even in the 80s when I was in the military, that's not doctrine. Like, where's your supporting
No.
elements? Where, like, this isn't combined arms warfare. It's like a dude stole a tank and then found himself in the bad guy's neighborhood, and they started messing with him. Like, I have no idea what the hell's going on here,
Yeah.
right? So,
Gone drunk on his way to Wendy's. Don't worry about it.
do they? And honestly, Wendy's probably is subsidized for small business owners in Ukraine, so they can continue to have their Wendy's franchises. Just had to throw that out there. That's probably where some of your money's going.
Mark's a little bitter about small business.
Well, I just see
it's fair. It's fair.
Okay, but here is, I am a little bitter, and I'm not the only one. And I didn't have time to put this in the show notes. If you are talking for a little bit, or if Paul comes on, I'm not sure if we're going to get the sheriff to come on tonight or not. But depending on who can still join us guest wise, and if I can go and find this clip, I'll play it. But it is a resident of the city of Chicago totally unloading on the mayor. And it doesn't matter the melanin content of their skin, but just put it in context. It's a black, an older black lady giving him the raspberries like there's no tomorrow about the illegal immigration and where the funding's going and the crime and she laid into him. So to that point, though, Redbeard, people are starting to wake up and people are getting a little pissed off, and they're starting to get froggy about this, right? As well they should.
Yeah, I just real quick, because I feel like that will be a good segue into what we're going to go into next. But I just want to kind of wrap up this the Russia-Ukraine thing real quick, if you're okay with that, to where when we look at this at that particular article, people can say what they want. You can be disagreeable all day long. But what this has done, which some people have pointed out, a lot of people hate people for pointing this out, but this has fundamentally allowed Russia to not only speed up the modernization of facets of their military, to really work out doctrinal issues, to really fix some of their industrialization issues and their ability to manufacture, but it's hypercharged their ability to manufacture things. They're on a wartime economy. Go ahead. Oh, you're muted there, Mark.
Depending on how you want to do three, there or there.
It looks good. Yeah, it looks good.
That's it. You know what? I'm just going to leave I've got a little, I'm kind of been dealing with a cold and stuff, so I've been muting myself. I think everybody's just going to have to suffer through my for the rest of the night. So, because that's 3 times now, I'm clearly screwing that up. But to your point, I just wanted to throw this out there. As we're kind of going into the, just continue, Jeremy. I think there's another way I can bring that up here in a second. I'm sorry.
I'll wrap it up real quick. I just wanted to say on that point, like they are benefiting from this in many different ways. And what's interesting is they have the domestic capacity to do this. They're not outsourcing their stuff. They're not, yes, they've gotten some stuff from China and some other places, but they've ramped up a lot of their own domestic stuff, and they've really been able to move themselves forward as a country through all of this, manufacturing, but militarily as well. The final point I wanted to make on this, though, is look at what our expenditures have been, right? I just want to, I brought this up before, I think, in the Why Are We Still in NATO episodes that we've done a while ago. But look at what our expenses have been. And if we have sent so much. I don't care if it's defunct equipment. I don't care if it's equipment that we don't use anymore. I don't care if it's, stuff that we feel that we can get rid of, whether it's artillery shells or javelins or whatever. You have to understand that there's also not only a defensive ramification to look at here, because we're giving our own stockpiles away as well as many other European countries, but we're also marketing this stuff to the Ukrainian military. We're telling them, oh, this javelin's going to change the game for you. This Abrams is going to change the game for you. This F-16. And the problem of it is we're also marketing this as like our worst versions of these things will overcome the Russians and they won't have a response. And then when the Russians do have a response, I mean, at this point, you can't convince me that the United States actually cares about Ukraine. They don't care about Ukraine. What they care about is BlackRock getting their investments over there. And in my opinion, and I'll end it here, I realistically believe that they have an incentive to destroy generations of young fighting age men in Ukraine so that there's little resistance when our NGOs in these companies like BlackRock go in, there's a changing of the garb, and then they will go unopposed and uncontested. And it's, to me, it's pretty sick. And we're also doing it at our expense of our own supplies. So we have a country that feels we can wage war when some of our most valuable stockpiles have been depleted to low levels. So
And so on that note, right? So I'm
Yeah.
glad I paused and let you kind of
Yep.
finish that. So there's actually, in my opinion, there's three different kind of prongs to that. I'll start at the
Yeah.
end where you just talked about, rebuilding the infrastructure, BlackRock. So to me, this goes back into what's really taking place here. Why are we so invested in this all of a sudden? And Redbeard, you and I have talked about this. It's almost ad nauseum now in so many different episodes. What is
Right.
really taking place here? Like, how did we go from administrations that were all about buddy with the Russians? And if you think I'm lying, just go back and watch that famous clip of Obama leaning across, and it wasn't to Putin, it was to Medvedev. I think it was Medvedev. So I might be wrong there a little bit. I don't know my Russian politicians maybe as good as I should. And he's saying, hey, look, once I get reelected, we'll have more room to do more things. Right. So we went for, and then the Hillary Clinton, the it's easy button or whatever the hell that just, oh God, that was so, what do they call that, man? That was just cringe. That was just cringe. Right.
Oh,
But
yeah.
we went from that environment of loving Russia. And matter of fact, go do your own research. Look at Sokovo. Pull up Skokovo, and then look at the group that Hillary Clinton and our State Department during that time put together that worked with Russian technology firms. And you look, I can't prove this. I'm not an agency anymore. I haven't seen the intel, but you can it's a straight line from all of that money, all of that suddenly ability to tap into American technology. And now we've got hypersonic missiles, over in Russia. I'll be the first person to say this. I remember, Bill Clinton, and we had one of our surveillance aircraft that was forced down. And a lot of the components of that, this was forced down by China. This is back during the Clinton era. It's the same type of thing. And then I can't remember. I think this was Gore's kind of like pet project, but we sold very sensitive gyroscopic technology to the Chinese. And that you need that technology to increase the accuracy of your ICBMs. Yeah, it's a nuclear weapon, but it's still got to be, within the ring, right? Otherwise, and so we as a country have no one but ourselves to blame, to your point that you're just getting at there, Redbeard. So that's the BlackRock part. I really like that. But then the other thing is, and so I use Zero Hedge quite a bit, as people have noticed. Look, it's an economic newspaper. They really focus a lot on the stock markets and the world economy and this and that. There's some great reporting out there about how all of these sanctions have had the exact opposite effect. To Redbeard's point, Russia's not suffering through these sanctions. They've actually found a way to use this to their advantage, and now they're stronger than ever before. So go do your own research on that. Zero Hedge is a great source. If you're in economics, what's going on in the world, it's very interesting. But they've got probably 1 out of maybe 6 or 8 articles is more of this type of stuff. It's more because this has an impact on the world economy, as Redbeard just pointed out. And that's something we should all be concerned about. Are we just doing this so BlackRock and all of its, and I won't even say, the people who own BlackRock stock, it'll be all the board members and, and the Obamas and the Clintons and the Bushes and Mitch McConnell's and Nancy Pelosi's. They're going to make a shit ton of money out of it. And then my final comment, though, to what you just said, Redbeard. So I'm agreeing with you. This isn't a disagreement, but you made me smile and laugh because you've alluded to it and you didn't say it. So I'm applauding you, sir. But just because you sent over Abrams tanks or F-16s or Leopard 2s, that is not a game changer. Because if you're not doing combined arms warfare, so here's my comment for everybody watching. If you're old enough, and if you're not old enough, go back and do your own little research. But go back to Gulf One. Go back to the days of Bush the Senior and Schwarzkopf and look at the ass whooping we handed to the Iraqi military, right? That was combined arms warfare that no one had ever seen before. That's America's way of fighting war. We're supposedly working with the Ukrainians, and to Redbeard's point, we're going to give you a $60 or $80 million tank, and and the guy's going to steal it to go to McDonald's, and he takes a left instead of taking a right. Now he's on the battlefield, gets blown up. Like, well, what do you think was going to happen without close air support, without infantry support, without artillery support, without maneuver warfare, right? I
just want to say, like, just to kind of, I guess, wrap up this segment here, my heart goes out to the people that are caught in the middle of all of this, and it both respectively the Ukrainian people and the Russian people. Depending on who you talk to, Russians might say that those are their kin, but it's sad because when you think about it, war sucks, man. It tears families apart. It devastates communities. It's not good, and I really have a very high level of empathy for both for people, all the people caught up in this. It's a terrible, sad situation, and I think that personally, and we have perpetrated a criminal level of usury when it comes to Ukraine, and we have played them like a fiddle, unfortunately, and it's. I think it's well within the United States government's, MO to, whether they willingly know it or not. We have a great way of strengthening and creating our own enemies, and then depleting our defensive capabilities while doing so. And we, I don't know that if I've said this before, but I genuinely worry about the future. Maybe not necessarily if going to fight Russia or whatever, but I genuinely worry about the future because, we have so much incompetence and corruption in our own government. And I find it very ironic that people are going to say, well, Russia's corrupt, Ukraine's corrupt. I don't care about their corruption. I'm sorry, but we have so much of it. Every issue that you can raise that Russia does or Putin does, we can bring it back on ourselves because our government has killed as many people in many ways. And we have done so many of the same things that we accuse so many other people of doing. And I honestly, I'm tired of it all.
It's the innocent party theory or whatever, however you want to say it.
Yeah.
Like, dude, I look, we haven't done anywhere near the horrendous types of actions or that other countries have throughout history, but we're not squeaky clean. We've got our own issues. I mean, especially look, Obama I don't want to call him king, I don't like using that term, but he was the master of the drone strike. I mean, I have no idea how many and I, again, we can argue this, and that's what we should have in our society. We are a constitutional republic.
Healthy
People are
debate.
entitled to their own opinions. You could sit there and say, well, there's no one who's really innocent if they're at the compound that's, that's safeguarding, bin Laden or Zawahiri or whatever, whoever the target is. Like, you say that, but that child has no choice in the matter. And you've clearly not lived in other countries because, you don't have choices in these matters in many countries of the world, right? It just is what it's going to be, So I'm thinking of, I'm going to screw up his name here all of a sudden. He's an American citizen. He was the head of Al Qaeda's propaganda arm.
I know who you're talking about.
Was that Zawahiri? I just threw this up out of nowhere, but again, I don't think it was Zawahiri. But just on that note, so under we used a Tomahawk cruise missile, or that was a Hellfire, blew up the vehicle he was traveling in. He's an American citizen. That's not called due process. His son was in the vehicle, and we killed him too. Is that due process? Is that something that we should be proud of? Is that what we want to do? And I really should remember the name because it's burned in my brain because that's one of the things as a ground branch officer, serving my country, or as a Delta Force guy or an Army Ranger or a Special Forces. That's exactly the type of operation where those men, would be like, no, this is what I'm here to do. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he's an American. We don't arbitrarily kill people. So you got to be innocent, right? So I just want to throw that on. I'll give you one quick second. Then we got BCP in the
I'm just going to put a dagger at the heart of this corruption accusation type thing, because we could sit and point fingers at this country or that country. But let's be honest. For a lot of people that are like, well, it's Putin. For all the people that just incessantly hate Putin to probably a very unhealthy level. I don't know how you manage stress, but it's like, like he throws out.
They should drink more.
Yeah, something, and it's like, he throws out, political opponents and journalists from windows. Okay, well, we shot Lavoy Finicum on the side of a road with people in his vehicle. Show me the difference between our government and theirs, please.
Our FBI just raided the house of a guy who's older and more feeble than me and just killed him. So let's just take a step back and look in the mirror before we start casting stones in glass houses.
I'm just saying, can we clean our house before we start pointing fingers? So
hey, I'm going to do a point of person. No, it wasn't Zulu Link. No, it wasn't. Oh no, it was Anwar al-Awlaki. No, you just nailed it. Zulu Link. For the win. It was Anwar al-Awlaki. Our American spelling always screws me up because that's not how it's actually spelled or pronounced in different. So anyway, but that's a different story. But Anwar al-Awlaki, he was the head of their propaganda arm, and he was an American citizen. So good job, Zulu Link. Zulu Link. Pour yourself a drink, sir. Pour yourself a drink, and pat yourself on the back. But I got to do a quick moment of personal privilege before we bring on BCP. We got Mike here.
What's up?
I actually talked to Mike. Mike's a good guy. Mike's going to help me field test the SRDP. He's got I'll just save that for a different thing. So Mike's a good guy. Mike, thank you for joining us here tonight.
Yeah, man.
Good to see you on board.
Appreciate it.
Let us bring in BCP.
BCP.
We got BCP in his house. All right, BCP, you are co-founder, co-host, whatever you want to call it, of this podcast. I don't know exactly. I know you've been sitting there in the ready room for about the last 3 minutes as we were kind of wrapping this up. I don't know how much you caught of the episode so far, but let's give you a quick chance to do an agree, disagree with anything that you may have heard, or even just only if you only came at that last part. Because your timing is perfect, sir, because we're going to segue into phase 2 of this night. So, and while you're talking, please don't anyone be offended, but I've got to, so I'm learning this software. I'm going to have to dump all the tabs and then bring up the new tabs for the next part. Just kind of how it works. I can't be in 2 different browsers and stuff. But BCP, tell everybody a little bit about yourself. Do a agree, disagree, or however you want to do it. And but one last shout out, Zulu Inc. Anwar al-Awlaki, good call. Nice pull. Nice pull, sir.
Nice.
That's what makes you a
Came
good
in
man.
with the clutch.
Seriously, came with the clutch. BCP, good to see you on a Friday night, sir. The floor is yours.
Good to be here. Can you hear me? Because I'm on my phone.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, major computer problems today. That's why I'm super late. But so I did hear some of this, and I would say that for Redbeard's thoughts on Putin, I would say that we're not too harsh on Putin. We're too soft on our house, and I think that agrees with Redbeard in a sense. Exactly what he said. We're doing that. We are worse in some areas. So, but I also believe that Putin is a very bad man and does a lot of bad things. To go back to the origination of all this stuff, our government basically encouraged or made Ukraine give up their nukes. If they would have kept their nukes, Russian would have been kept at bay for a long time. Instead, now they gave up their nukes, and now we're giving them money for I don't even know what we're giving them for. So I think that there's a complete corrupt environment between the United States and Ukraine. It's obvious if you don't see it. I don't see how not. So I'm not. I'm pro-Russian people. I'm pro-Ukrainian people. I'm not pro either of their governments.
Yeah, that's fair.
Hey, before we go too far afield, I just want to. You had a great point, and I just want to remind everyone of this. And again, with anything on the internet, whether it's us, whether you know us personally, whether you've talked to us, or somebody who you love their podcast, do your own research. But BCP, to your point, that whole the release of the nuclear weapons back into Russia, if you have to take a step back and look at the history of this event, and that was part and parcel of it. And we have reneged on the. Yeah, I don't want to keep beating that horse to death, but people need to go and start doing their own research and figure things out. Like Redbeard, you've already mentioned, the hell, just to even watch it's good to watch the interview Putin did with Tucker, and then he's had 2 subsequent interviews, interviews subsequent to that. And again, look at his body language. Even though you don't speak Russian, you can still hear the inflection. You can still hear the tone, the cadence of his voice. You can still gather that. You can still glean information out of that. Yeah. And and it just highlights that, hey, people other cultures look at the world through a different lens than we do.
100%.
Because and everybody knows that's true. We're Americans. We look at the world through the lens of rebels. That's what we used to be anyway. Like, we don't trust the government. Again, you've heard me rail on this time and time again. Where are the classical liberals? I used to respect you people. Where in the F are you nowadays? Yeah. So, but that nuke thing that you just brought up, BCP, that cannot be poo-pooed or downplayed enough. That was part of the deal in it. So imagine, Zulu Inc. alluded to this earlier. You make a deal, and then you go against the deal. How do you think the other side is going to respond to that? I mean, how are they going to view you when you're reneging on all the deals that you've just made with them? How do you think they're going to respond to that? So BCP, continue, sir. I just had to interrupt there real quickly because I didn't want to go too far away from the nuclear weapons, because that is huge. It's a huge thing. But that wasn't Russia's fault.
No,
we did that.
We did that.
Yeah, we did that.
Yeah, we should have utilized that instead of worrying about down the road bringing Ukraine into NATO. They could have been our ally without being in NATO, and it would have been very simple there. So we make a lot of really stupid moves, and the Afghanistan withdrawal and leaving all the weapons and the lies that they're telling us about that. I mean, there's so many weapons there that went into the hands of terrorists and other countries, including, speculation, but including Iran. Anybody that's our enemy is getting a hold of those weapons. This is why do we, and then we want to start new confrontations so that we can pay for more weapons. We already had them there. Why did we stay there? I just don't get it.
How dare you? How dare you reference common sense in this conversation, sir? How dare you?
It's almost as if we create our own enemies.
I'm sorry, I just cheated everybody who can watch this. I could see it. Like I had you full screen. Redbeard was just about to poop himself laughing. So now I missed that moment. I'm trying to get all the other articles up for the last half of this, and you had just such a great point right there. Hey, a quick little pause. It is Friday. It's a little after 1900 Central Standard Time on what is this, Friday? This is the 1st of March. I hope, and I just want to say thanks to everybody who's watching with us right now, to anybody who watches this later, who listens to it. And I hope, I actually really do. I mean this seriously. I hope that this is a fun way to spend your Friday night. Yeah. And, but on that note, Redbeard, I don't think we kind of did this. We forgot the housekeeping. Let's just do a middle of the stream housekeeping.
Yeah, we'll hit it quick.
Tell everybody our schedule for next week. Just real quickly. Do you want to talk about Be the Difference or save that for next week? But at least tell the new schedule for what we're doing.
Yeah. So for next week, just real quick, I'll give a brief insight as to what that's going to be. So we are going to do, for our 3rd week in our 3-week cycle, we're going to do a week called Be the Difference. And this week is going to essentially involve conversations of literally how you can be just a better human being. We're going to cover a wide array of things.
No, you missed my point. You can do that. I was really more trying to make sure everybody understood our new times for next week.
Oh, yeah.
Start there. Yeah.
So,
Sorry.
You
can still tell people what Be the Difference is, but but the times are the important one.
Yeah, so before I get too far ahead.
Sorry, everybody. That was my bad. I totally misled Redbeard. Yep.
No, I think I might have misled myself, to be fair.
Well, I probably didn't say
I'm mildly autistic that way, so.
you are mildly autistic.
But no, we are going to do, we will be shifting to Mondays and Thursdays, and we are going to be having new time consistent across the board, which is going to be 1800 Central Time for us. So that is what our new schedule is going to be. It's no longer going to be Tuesdays and Fridays. It's going to be Mondays and Thursdays at 1800 Central Time. So as for the week next week, Be the Difference is all about how we can be better people, how we can help build our communities, how we can better ourselves, and basically just be. Go ahead, Mark.
I was just going to say, just only give them a tease. You'll have your spiel next week. Yeah.
So
just give them a little tease.
No, it'll be good. Man. I'll just say that it'll be good. I think you guys will like it. So.
Well, I really feel that if you're watching or listening to this podcast, you will like it because it's going to resonate with you. I mean, Jeremy and I were, here, the last part of the housekeeping, and to give you a little understanding of why we changed it, we were going to do tinfoil hat, but there's some really great channels out there, across a variety of platforms that do a great job with cryptids and UFOs and, skinwalk, all that kind of stuff. Jeremy and I and BCP too, we're just geeks, maybe like you, if you're watching this, we just like that kind of stuff. But we were like, do we really have anything value added to bring to the table? And the answer is probably no. But what we think we're trying to accomplish, or what we want to accomplish with this podcast, is to use this as a vehicle to find ways to help other people realize that they can make a difference. And that's kind of how, and then Jeremy did the whole Be the Difference. And then there it was. And we're like, well, that's it. Let's just do that instead of UFO stuff.
And mind you, this is kind of a labor of love because Mark and I do tend to stay on the phone for an hour or 6.
Paul, BCP's laughing. He's been privy to that shit too.
Yeah.
All right, let's
my
move on.
apologies, BCP.
You should be apologizing to me, man. All right, let's bring it back on. And as Mike is showing here, that's maybe the ultimate goal here, sir. It does seem to be on someone's agenda, right? Again, going back to the beginning of the episode, is it an imminent asteroid that's going to hit us in the next year? Is it a pole shift? Is it a zombie apocalypse? Is it a foreign, an alien invasion? I don't know what it is, but clearly something has got all the ants running around. And at the end of the day, it does seem that, so if you look at task and purpose, right? I'm going to use a military kind of phrase terminology here. What's my task? What's the purpose of that task? My task is I'm going to conduct an ambush. Why? In order to disrupt the you know, the logistical supply or the communications, or, you know, kill a high value target, you know, da, da, da. That's task and purpose. Mike, I think you're just kind of, we may not be able to identify the task here. Well, maybe the task is the destruction of America, and the purpose is to usher in a whole new era. I don't know. I don't know, sir. I'm not pretending to have the answers. I don't think any of us are, but it sure as hell, those dots on the wall are starting to present a picture, aren't they? And that picture is starting to take shape. So
That's right.
BCP, I think I kind of lost track here, but you were talking, and I think we kind of got a little sidetracked with Redbeard. Do you want to wrap that up before we go into the next section? And then on that note, Redbeard, we're at an hour. Let's make an executive call, and it's your call here tonight. We're at an hour 14. Let's call it an hour 15. And then notice I didn't say 1 minute and 15 seconds tonight.
You're getting better, Mark. I'm proud of you.
Hey, but BCP, I've already like, hey, Mike, hey, Mark, your mic. I've already done that 3 times tonight. So I've got that going for me. But Redbeard, how do we want to roll this? Because I kind of need to know so I can either skip through some slides, or do we want to take this to maybe an hour 30, hour 45? Like, keep talking for 15 minutes and then start wrapping it up. What do you think there? Or
let's do, honestly, if you want, do you want to run it for up to 2?
Let's see where we are in that 130 to 145, and then make that decision right there. Okay.
Yeah.
BCP, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm good. I think with the 3 of us, if we shoot for an hour and 30, we'll hit 2.
So
let's shoot for an hour and 30.
Yeah, that's a sad freaking truth right there. And just one last little comment.
We did good Tuesday though. So.
Yeah. But Mike's got a great point. Yeah, exactly, Mike. That's what we're talking about. Why are they all building bunkers? And seriously, you know, shouldn't you be looking around like, why are all my neighbors putting up like, whatever it is, like root cellars or sandbags or building bunkers? Like, wouldn't you be like looking around like, okay, did I just not get the memo? Like, what the hell's going on here? So yeah, good point, Mike. All right, BCP, Redbeard, and everyone else who's still with us here on the live stream. So I'm just going to go into, so here's, as we go into the second portion, I'm just going to let me bring up two parts of the slide deck. The second one was going to get us into the next set of agree or disagree questions. So let me just bring these 2 things up. All right, so here's something else that we should all be, and I'm sure everyone is experiencing this or witnessing it at some level, right? And okay, yeah, there, I see it right there. I could probably go back and scroll. I'm just going to leave it right there. But throughout all these discussions and issues having to do with warfare and conflict, don't forget there's a logistical, I think it was, I actually think I'm going to quote Patton here to some extent, or it may be, what was his name from Russia? No, I think it was Patton, but it's all about logistics. And so if we're going into these conflicts and we're being engaged in these, trouble spots throughout the world, well, what is that doing to our own logistics? And now this is a soft spot in my heart. I'm just going to throw my bias out there. I run centerline systems. I hate certain business practices that unfortunately are like the main effort in the world today. But just think about that, right? Just think about if you're going to go to war with 1, 2, or 3, what's going to happen to X, Y, and Z? Are you still going to have access to that? Is it going to be cut off? How are we as a people going to deal with suddenly not being able to have our TikTok every day or whatever that thing is? You have to look at supply chains. And clearly, if you go back to the beginning of the whole bullshit, there's been serious supply chain issues. I throw that out there as a dot on the wall because to me, that seems to be part of a nefarious kind of planning strategy, right? Because you would want to disrupt your enemy's supply chain, whatever. Well, and depending on who you even consider the enemy to be, right? But you're going to want to do these type of things. And then now bring it the last slide over to you guys for the agree disagree. Here it is. I mean, in their own words, right? So I can't see you guys anymore. I'm just going to stay here because I want to talk about this real quickly. And Redbeard, correct me if I'm wrong. You guys can see what I highlight here, correct? Yeah, we figured out that last time. Right. So Chinese strategists are using TikTok information-driven mental warfare. We talked about it in the last episode, disintegration warfare. But again, and this is I'm pulling this from Schweitzer. This is, people are talking about Schweitzer's book. But here you go. But we talk about the military-industrial complex right here. This is the China. That may have highlighted wrong. Yeah, let me just go back here. Right there. I'll do it that way. Penetrated the hearts of America's culture, becoming a central part of the lives of our children and young adults. So just think about that from a warfare perspective. I just want to point that out there, and then I'm going to turn it over to you guys. Agree, disagree, but this is the new reality that we have found ourselves in, and we're facing an adversary who isn't thinking of main battle tanks and that classical type of warfare. Who wants to go up against America that, demonstrated what our capabilities were during Gulf War and Gulf II? Do you really want to do that? No, you're going to find another way. And especially if you're and I mean this in a very, I mean this seriously. If you're a shrewd, cunning, flexible opponent, you're not going to come in there and, like, I've seen videos, and I never liked Mike Tyson when I was growing up. I have nothing but the utmost respect for that guy. I've watched so many of films of him in the last couple of years. That guy was exactly what I'm talking about. You think Mike Tyson's going to come up and go toe to toe, and the next thing you know, he's dancing better than Muhammad Ali could have, and he's down low, and that's who you want to be. If you're a serious opponent, if you're serious in your skill set, as he was in boxing, you are adaptable. You change like a chameleon or water to a vase. You're going to change to your environment and to your adversary. All right. Agree, disagree, guys? And I don't know if that quite made the point I was trying to get at, which is we've got serious weaknesses in vulnerabilities in our supply chain, what we as a culture have become dependent upon. And then here is one of our primary, if not the primary adversary, saying, yeah, we're doing this to you guys intentionally.
Yeah.
Agree, disagree. Who wants to grab it?
I'll yield the floor to Paul.
Yeah. BCP's got to get in the fight here.
Okay. I agree. And I'll say that I saw Jay Johnson, the Obama DHS guy, talking on Fox. And I don't even watch Fox, but YouTube throws them to me, I guess, because I'm a conservative person. I think I want to watch them. But so I watched that, and he was talking about how, Obama was so much better than Biden because he deported more people. We all know that was baloney. It was all for show. They were still letting in a ton of people. And he did mention something that gave it away about DACA. He said, I think everybody that was involved in DACA should be made a citizen. Well, we knew that was going to happen. Trump tried to stop that, and the Supreme Court stopped Trump from saying that was, you can't take away the executive order. They're already here. So that was step one. Okay. As far as our infrastructure. So getting back to that time of Obama, where they were letting people in the border, and trust me, it's worse now, but it was bad back then. And now we're letting everyone in here. And honestly, I really feel like when I saw under Obama, the people coming across the border tended to be from, Central America, North America, and South America. I didn't see a lot of people. There were a few that snuck through. Absolutely. Now, they're coming from all over the place, especially the ones with the black backpacks that we see on Black Scout. So they're in our country right now. They are here right now to speculation, of course, go after our infrastructure. And I absolutely believe that our infrastructure is not. There's a threat for our infrastructure through tech and all that stuff, the stuff that I work in. But right now they're here, and over the years, gradually we've seen, oh well, they're shooting up a power station, or they're shooting up this, they're hitting a cell tower. Oh no, they're inside now, and they have networks. They have beyond that. So yeah, I agree, but that's my thought.
Hey, I actually unmuted myself this time. Redbeard, as I bring this over to you to see if you agree or disagree with either the statement, in general or with BCP's points, but I just got to throw this out there for BCP. So one of the notes I wrote down is you mentioned infrastructure. And so again, we're so inundated with so many events.
Yeah.
It's so hard to keep track of everything that's taking place. But I challenge everybody, take a pause, do your own research, just think back on what has happened in the last 2 years. And I don't know, maybe there's an aggregate that's already doing the stats on this. Maybe Statista has the stats on this. How many chicken poultry factories, how many, look at all of our critical infrastructure that suddenly has been burning down and exploding. And I'm going to admit my bias here. I come at it from what my previous life was, and it, was a pretty dominant part of who I am as a person. And it's hard to escape that dominance, which is unconventional warfare. And you see some of our previous episodes. Redbeard, did we ever do Carver as one of the training things here on Mission Critical?
We did.
Was that Centerline? Was that here?
Yeah. We did that.
Okay, so find the episode where we talk about Carver. Like, I just keep looking at what my counterparts from a foreign country would be doing if I was able to operate with the impunity that they can in America. Again, in my previous life, if I was that person operating with this degree of impunity in a hostile country, holy crap, to BCP, the reason I'm just interjecting there, that's exactly what you would be doing. So is this industrial espionage? Is it unconventional warfare? Or is it just like, or have we just become such shitty people? We just don't care. And and Joey or Susie smoking a cigarette right next to the, the flammable liquids, shack in your building. I don't know. Seriously. What is it?
I can tell you that the reports out there on hackers and, for lack of a better term, hackers that are trying to send out ransomware, they feel like, well, if we can infiltrate an IT organization or something like that, they may not pay the ransom because they do their backups, they do all that kind of stuff. And before United Healthcare got nabbed through one of their subsidiaries, I would have said healthcare would have been a big target because they have to pay. But the key point at this time is it's not about those two. Even though healthcare right now is on the front and center, operational technology, hackers are saying they don't pay ransoms for the most part for the technology stuff. But when it comes to hacking their operational technology, which would be cell tower equipment, factory equipment, nuclear equipment, that is gold to them. If they can do that, they know they're going to get their ransom back. So this is something to be very serious about from the technology side. And if you're not in the technology side, still absolutely know that is their goal right now. They're going to still go after the other stuff, but the operational technology is where the money is.
And so I just brought this up. You must have read the show notes, or you're just got a hidden camera.
No, I can't read any of that.
Okay. I'll bring this full screen for everybody. But this is just part of an article. So again, it's talking about in our politics. But we do have some politicians who are raising the alarms that BCP just alluded to. We have huge sectors in our critical infrastructure that are very vulnerable right now. And I'm not talking cyber. I'm just talking about the criticality or the vulnerability of our supply chains and where we're getting, whatever it is, 1, 2, or 3, or X, Y, and Z. We're not in a very good situation. And if you want to take it from my perspective, which is, kind of that whole bald evil guy with a cat on my lap, this is exactly what we do. When you're at that level, it's not about money. It's you're maneuvering things. I'm not going to do just one thing against you. I'm going to defeat you across a full spectrum of areas of vulnerabilities. I'm going to find again and see our previous video. Redbeard, I don't remember what episode that was. That seemed like so long ago, but and maybe we should do it again in the future. But Carver, right? You can go look this up. This is open source information. Carver, that's maybe our Western or American way of looking at it. I'm sure, the North Koreans have a different acronym. The Chinese have a different acronym. The Russians have a different acronym. The Cubans, et cetera, et cetera. But it's basically how you're going to identify key pieces of infrastructure that you got to sit there. You're just basically doing a cost benefit. Can I even get to this thing? Can it be rebuilt? X, Y, and Z. You look at it from a very critical perspective, and that just goes into what BCP just said right there. So
yeah, it's interesting, and I've mentioned this before, but as somebody who used to work in the transportation infrastructure area by way of rail, it's amazing how, just from working in that area, how many areas that, we would go out to fix that really wouldn't need fixing, but then there are some areas that really should have been fixed but weren't on the work docket. You know, I had always suspected, like oversights like that are pretty drastic, right? Like, because I think it would stun people to realize how easy it really is to take some of the most petty ways of a train derailing, and you're just like, no, that's too easy. It's like, no, actually, it's not that difficult. And then you look at certain things that might derail a train, and it's like, oh well, I would have figured that would have happened. But when you have oversights in certain areas, to where as a person who fixed track for several years, it really kind of makes me shake my head, like, okay, why are we fixing this section of track when we should be paying more attention down here? I had suggested videos ago that perhaps they want to collect insurance on it. Perhaps they want to do this. I don't know the corporate bureaucracy to that extent, but so I can only provide an opinion. But when you look at infrastructure in particular, and Mark, I think you and I had a conversation about this a while ago. I feel like because we live in such an age of information and such a technologically advanced age, that I feel like some people are regressing their tactics to more analog protocols, to where it's like, oh, we're so far ahead that the actual sleuthy thing and the better way of doing it now, to have a lower kind of profile, is we're going to go much older school, and we're going to collect the old fashioned way, like going into a bar and sitting right next to Mark and, honey potting him up a little bit, but in a less conspicuous way of having that hot Asian chick sit next to you. It might be whatever, but it's like, everybody wants to have this space age way of thinking, but that's not always the case. And on to bow tie into what Paul said, I also think when you look at the actual like direct action style attacks on infrastructure, like the power stations, I kind of evaluate that as like prodding attacks. Okay, what's their response? What are they going to do to respond to this? And they may have people ready to take the fall for that, because they know that the information they can provide is worth however many years they're going to sit there. And you got to remember, China has people that are, I hate to say it, radicalized enough to be like, send me, I'll go, I'll take the fall, I'll sit there, but I will get you the information you're looking for. So
I want to kind of keep moving into, because we're not going to get to all the slides, and we've got some comments, and then somebody's sitting there. I don't really know what.
It's me, Mark. I'm trying to gather my thoughts. I can't chat from my phone, or it'll disconnect me. So okay. I connected through my non-working computer.
That was awesome. That was awesome, because I was like, what the hell is going on? And we do have like 2 or 3 other people who might ping in. Hey, that was a great curveball. I think I handled it. I'd give myself an 80%, maybe a B plus on that one, not an A though. But thank you for pointing that out. But Redbeard, back to your point. And then I kind of want to just kind of bring up just a few slides along that line. And as we've seen from some of the comments here, I just want to bring this up real quickly from Angry Viking. Nice to see you again here tonight, sir. Definitely appreciate you being on the episode. But he's got a great point. To what level, as you mentioned, like our rail and our infrastructure, some of our infrastructure is so old now. I kind of slightly disagree with Angry Viking and you on this point, and you guys both are angry, and you both are Vikings, so I don't know. One will come off the top rope, and the other guy will hit me with a chair. Slide a chair into the ring or something.
If I may, real quick, Mark, I think the fact that you disagree, that like, is it not a fundamental way of actually coming to figuring out how we can counter this? Like, you have to have differing opinions, so that way, like, it brings up
Well,
a
it's
lot
not
more
even
possibilities.
Redbeard. I mean, to your point, but it's not
Yeah.
even a differing opinion. I agree
Yeah.
with you guys
Yep.
and your fundamentally, I
Yep.
agree with your guys' premise and your argument.
Yeah.
I just disagree in the simple fact that, yeah, you know, both of these components
Yeah.
of our infrastructure are definitely getting old and they definitely need to be replaced. So I'm just approaching it from a slightly different
Yep.
perspective. You know, I'm not looking at it from that, you know, economic or, you know, I'm
Yeah.
just a business who's going to cut
Yep.
corners as much as I can to, you
Right.
know, to make sure, you know, ensure my profit margins are the highest. I'm also looking at it from like, well, it doesn't matter if you guys are being stupid about it. I'm still going to attack it because it's still
100%.
a major point of vulnerability and it's easy
Yeah.
access, hard to replace, et cetera, et cetera. That's really
Yep.
my only disagreement is no, I
Yep.
think it is still, I mean, to both your point though, like, yeah, I suppose if you wanted to wait, you know, and if we continue to be as stupid as we are as a country, yeah, just give it another 20 years. I mean, half of our bridges will
Yeah.
collapse. Our
It'll
rail,
fail on its own.
yeah, exactly. But that's not usually how
Yeah.
our enemies are doing things. But hey, I'm going to bring up one more comment, and then we're just gonna. I'm
Yep.
not going to breeze through, but I'm going to bring up a few points, and then Redbeard, I'm going to let you kind of decide. Well, you and BCP on where we go there at the end, because I do have some things that are a little bit more on the domestic side, but we maybe can get away from that. I want to bring up what Learn Me Something just said, because it has to do with derailment. So Redbeard, you might be able to respond to this. I'll give you a quick second to think about
Yeah.
that. What is that? So for people who are listening to this on Spotify, for example, so one of our viewers just said derailments were a means to force people to give up their land so that corporate interests could buy up all the land they can. Well, actually, I think there's something to be said about that, Redbeard, because you know you may
Yeah.
not be able to do eminent domain, but if you can create a disaster, maybe, I suppose.
Well, so I do every once in a while scan some of the Senate hearings and the different committees and at the federal level because I do find them actually informative to see how our different bureaucrats or politicians go after each other, right? And talk about certain things. So this actually came up. I don't remember if it was Jim Jordan or who it was, but they had brought up like, hey, like we're so fixated on you know, sending money to Ukraine, we still haven't even helped anybody in East Palestine.
Yeah.
Why are we not helping our own people? Why are we not? And
Hey.
and it plays right into that whole thing. Like I thought that we were concerned about these people. Why are we still allowing these, you know, these people, basically almost coercing these people to live in these places because they can't even sell their homes? There's no,
All right,
and
so
some would argue
just
there is relief, but
so
where
just
is
slow
it?
it down right there on that point. All right. And East
Yeah.
Palestine is a great point. You know, like I love
Yeah.
how, yeah, that is just such a
It
travesty.
fires me up because I
Oh, yeah.
having worked in
Hey.
the railway sector, it irritates me, you know.
So maybe we're going to get sidetracked for a quick second because it should cause everyone pause. Why in the F has our government not addressed and
Yeah.
not talked about? Why hasn't not only our government, the people
Yeah.
that work for us, but also the media, who's supposed to be that, you know, that fourth column, that, you
Yeah.
know, that thing that keeps the government at bay, keeps corruption and keeps evil at bay through the
Yeah.
freedom of the press and through transparency. And it's crickets, and it's crickets
Yeah.
within our political parties on
Right.
both sides of the aisle. And that is a friggin' travesty, but it also should raise an eyebrow. Like, okay, what the F is really going on here? Why aren't they talking about this shit? Why is this being poo-pooed and pushed under the rug? You guys can answer that if you want. I'm going to share some stuff real quickly.
Well,
Go ahead, Redbeard.
no, I was going to type it up, but I'll just say it here too. I also think that to that, and it might even just raise another question. I'll let Paul add his 2 cents. But have you ever noticed that not only did we just brush and bury East Palestine, dude, where are all of the children and the missing adults from Hawaii? We still
Dude,
have
Mike,
no clue where those people are.
You and Mike are. I just popped over and I just
like,
saw his comment, and that's the same thing with the. Hey, it's the same thing with the Vegas shooting. Like, there's so many events that, like, whoa. Why aren't we talking about this? Where did this suddenly
are our children, notwithstanding the adults? I want answers as an American. Where are the children from the Hawaii fires. Dude, there's hundreds of them that are missing. And I'll tell, and I can speculate.
Just before you say it, just a quick shout out to you, Mike and Angry Viking. Yeah. And everybody else.
Yeah.
No, damn right. Keep that fire going, because that was a horror. I didn't mean it that way, but just damn it. It's been so, no one in the mainstream media is talking about this. No politician. It's like, let's just forget that happened. That tells me right there. That's where me, you know, whether you don't trust me because I used to work for the CIA, I don't care. But that's where that part of my life that was developed and trained, and I was pretty freaking good at it. That ain't going away. And I'm on the side of freedom. Like that causes me pause. That indicates deception. That indicates malicious intent. That indicates something we should be fucking shining light on, because something ain't right there, boys. Brother, something ain't right.
Dude, I'll bring this up too. Look at Oprah. Look at The Rock. Look at all these people that talk about, you know, oh, we're helping people. They bought all the freaking land that was burned, and there's missing children.
Hey, this brings it all the way back to what BCP was talking with BlackRock. Yeah, so we've got to slow this down, because we're kind of losing our format a little bit, because we're getting a little fired up.
Yeah, but this is part of that.
Thanks a lot to Learn Me Something, Angry Viking and Mike. I mean, for getting us all off, you know, hey, see how easy it was to derail us? I mean, just throw a little fuel on the fire. Hey, let's bring this back to BCP. Redbeard, I mean, these are great points, but, you know, again, we could sit and talk for the next 2 hours, and, you know, and that is my idea of fun. I actually would rather spend my Friday night doing exactly this, but let's kind of bring this back over to BCP. So I'm just going to pop these up real quickly and let everybody kind of see it. So so this is the point with my first one, and I'm not picking on anyone's sexual identity or religious beliefs. I could give a shit less, but to the point we're talking about right now, we've got real issues going on. And this is what the Air Force Academy is doing. Like, and you may be familiar with this person. This person is in Space Force. They've made some incredibly very odd statements, and it's just of interest to me. I thought we were here for war fighting, not pushing a political or a social agenda, right? So, and right here you can see, so the Pentagon has already spent and we're just starting the year. Fiscal year 2024 started in October of 2023. Just if people don't know that, October is actually the start of the end of a fiscal year, start of a new fiscal year. But, well, it used to be. Maybe it's not anymore for the military. But so since October, if I'm correct, October to February, you know, November, December, January, 4 months, we've spent $114 million to fund. And I don't even like the DEI. It is called die. It is die. You do this and you die. I mean, I do believe in that. So that's one thing. Just to give you guys a little bit of stuff to think about here. I heard you just making grunting noises. I'm
just irritated.
Hang on. But so we in light of all these issues we're talking about, these things that really have a first order effect, these are the things that will kill us. Instead, we're focusing on that right there, right? So that's one thing. I'm trying to find the Austin one. It's got things got a little screwed up here. Oh, okay. So here we go. And then so instead of focusing on the real world events that we've kind of, you know, just barely touched upon in this episode, then we have our SecDef. And Redbeard, do you remember we did this a couple episodes ago? So SecDef is what, 6 or 7 in the chain of command? I can't remember what we had to look it up, but you know, it's a pretty senior member in our chain of command for us as a country. And now we're hearing that it's common for somebody who's that high up in the chain of command to go days without talking to the commander in chief. I'm having a hard time believing that bullshit. Something else is going on there. And then my final one before I bring it back to you guys is, and then here's the real threat, right? So of all the things we've talked about tonight, mainstream media would tell you that Mark, Redbeard, BCP, DB, anybody who's watching or listening, we're just idiots, because the real threat to our country is this right here. It's people who believe their rights come from God. You are an extremist and a Christian national, because according to this person right here,
Yeah.
who is, you guys may have seen this report. This was actually from earlier this week or late last week. Yeah. She's basically saying that no, that's not Christianity. Christians don't believe our rights come from God. Only Christian nationalists believe our rights come from God. So we don't need to worry about, if you guys aren't picking this up, we don't need to worry about Russia or China or North Korea. It's people who believe in God and think that these rights to self-defense, to freedom of speech, to, not be to the rights of our persons and our property, to illegal searches, none of that shit matters. And only crazy Christian nationalists actually think that. Real Christians, no, they believe their rights are given to them by their government. See how the message is being changed? I wanted to get to that as we're at an hour and 45. So Redbeard will take your direction, but maybe that's where we kind of end. But that is the new language. I do have a couple more things to back up that it is a change in language. This is being done intentionally. Language is being changed to make those who believe in the Constitution seem to be the enemies of the state. And that's just the example. So you guys, we probably should come over to BCP. Agree with me? Disagree with me? What are your thoughts, BCP?
Well, so I'll try and be as quick as possible because I know we're getting late. It's not up to us what's going on in the Air Force or Space Force or whatever. That's our military leadership that's doing this. And as far as diversity, inclusion, and equity, I can't comment on that because that stuff involves, that's your employment. You cross that, you're in trouble. So I'll let leadership, again, in the private sector, deal with that. Public sector, deal with that on their own. I did want to mention, Mike brought it up a while ago about the Texas fire and the Hawaii fire, all this stuff. This has been going on in California and Wyoming and all that. People are doing. This is human. This is human. They're starting these fires. It's not funny, but they're starting these fires and then they're blaming stuff on climate change. And I heard somebody today, all again about, well, if you did Biden, it was Biden who said that. Well, they don't believe in climate change, and give me a break. Science is debatable. I'll leave it at that. Science is debatable.
Well, that is the essence of science. It's always debatable. Science is never, like, I saw a great meme on this the other day, and I'm not a good meme guy, but I do appreciate a good meme. And it was the whole and the meme was like the science was like making the comments. Oh, here it is. It's settled. The science. And then later, well, we got that wrong, and it's always evolving. The science, and that I think
Fauci is settled. Fauci settled. He said he is science. We're settled on him. We know who he is. Any criticism
of him is a criticism of science.
I know.
Hey, so here's the thing, guys. I think we're getting better at this, Redbeard. But now our Friday nights, we've agreed we'll go longer on Friday nights. I think we have to reconsider that on Thursdays. But we're at an hour 45. I actually still have.
I can tie one of our.
I had 5 other articles to bring up, but I think the point has been made here. So where do you guys want to go? Should we start wrapping this up? And
I'd wrap.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Here's my final comment to you guys. So I made a little joke about, then let's listen to this person because this person clearly has. And then here's Lloyd Austin and the Democrats defending that, the number 5 or number 6 person in our chain of command is absent and no one cares and no one knows. Like we're so effed right now, boys. I mean, and then the change in the language, right? So this I will do. Okay, as we're talking, I'm going to bring up one last right here. So this goes to my point. This is part of the war. Language, how we define things. Because if we can't say X, Y, or Z or 1, 2, and 3, well, then how do you know how to respond to things? They're newcomers. This is coming from the head of our executive branch. newcomers. They're not newcomers. The first act that these people have done, I'm not criticizing them as human beings. I don't know any of them. Maybe they're great people. Maybe they're assholes. I don't know. But your first act is to illegally enter into my country. And we have laws on the books for this. I mean, it really is just this simple. But see how the language is being changed. And this is happening throughout even like, and let me just come back to this real second. Was it Angry Viking who said this? And I liked it. Yeah, right here. Exploited children. Look at all the movement about in the trans world and the pedophile world. Like, oh, now these are minor attractive individuals or whatever that. We're changing the language so it's no longer 2 + 2 is 4. It's 2 + 2 = potato. And that's not my original term. The person who told me that the first time, I got it from you. I love you because I love that term. That's what it is. It's 2 + 2 = potato. So on that note, that was my kind of final thing. And it really is. It really is this time. Redbeard, BCP, take this out as you guys want to. Let's come over to BCP for however you want to go for final comments. Doesn't have to be an agree, disagree. And then Redbeard, I can see you already jotting little notes, and we'll come to you for final comments in the outro. Are you guys okay with that? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. That's how we'll wrap this up here tonight. BCP,
Beautiful.
It's all you, brother, man.
Yeah, I honestly, I think that I've said everything that I can at this point that I can say. There's so much more that I want to, and we would be at 4 hours if I continued, and you know that. So go on, wrap it up, Redbeard.
Oh, hey, that was it. You're punting to him already that quickly?
Hey,
well, if he needs time, I can talk, but I don't want to expand beyond this. I think
okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then on that note, then and as Learn Me Something says, great idea, Viking. I think he's talking to Angry Viking. But let's bring it over to our other red-bearded Viking, our co-host of this platform. And then seriously, Redbeard, let's just do that. Let's just kind of, it's been a good podcast.
We'll wrap it.
Yeah, we could talk for an additional 4 hours, as BCP just said. And
the
maybe
longer we go, the heavier the autism.
Just slow down 1 second. Fine. Seriously, final. And BCP is right. So after this is done, I probably will be on the phone with Redbeard and BCP. We'll be smoking a cigar, having a drink, and this probably will go on for another 4 hours. But you guys don't need to be drugged down into the depths of our souls along with us.
Pray for us.
Yeah. So Redbeard, wrap it up and take us out, brother, man.
So we talk about language, right? Mark, you'll appreciate.
I don't know if you should be full screen or if people need to see how we're responding.
No, I want to see how you guys react because I think you guys are gonna like this. So we talk about language, and I guess as long as we're moving the goalposts on absence and things going missing, which we see a lot of politicians go missing due to their dementia, and I guess you could probably throw the Secretary of Defense in this category, because he sees fit to just hop on a medical table whenever he wants. If we're changing language,
I have to throw this in there. It is a serious question. Either he literally is just not, they're just not communicating, or he has been so marginalized that no one. So think about that. That is the other possible option. Maybe no one in the administration gives a shit that their Secretary of Defense is out of pocket for 3 days. That is equally scary. That is hugely scary.
Well, did anyone ask if he communicated with Obama during that time? Not one reporter asked him that.
Dude, if we're going to start changing the narratives on how people go missing and stuff like that, dude, it's no wonder we've lost. Oh, that's right. A year of documents from the Pentagon detailing potential crimes and investigations into wrongdoings during our time in the Middle East. So if we're going to move those definitions around, I guess we can just lose whatever, because it doesn't matter anymore. This goes missing or this man goes missing. Well, it's not pertinent. We don't have to have good communication or any semblance of knowing what the heck we're doing anymore, because that's not pertinent to proper government function. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Let's just keep moving the goalposts until we run out of the stadium, much like freaking who was it? freaking was it Forrest Gump who just ran out of the stadium?
Yeah,
we'll just Forrest Gump this and just keep running until we can't anymore. So, so that's all I got. Yeah.
All right. Well, then, hey, before you take us out, we say it all the time and we mean it every time. You are the resistance. So thank you for tuning into the podcast. Don't be afraid. You are not alone. I mean, even if it's only the 5 or 10 or 100, whatever it is, I don't care about the number. You are not alone. You are the resistance. We have to now more than ever. November is going to be here before you even realize November is here. And our world, our lives are at stake here. I really do believe this. And that's what we're trying to do under Redbeard's new format. And I like it. And hopefully we'll be successful. But it also depends upon you, each and every one of you great men and women. You've got to stand tall now more than ever. You have to stand tall. Paul, BCP, any final comments before we come up to Redbeard for our outro?
I just want to say one thing about Mitch McConnell's retirement, and I know it could get us off track, and we cannot do this, right? We have to talk about it.
Oh, I fucking love. I forgot all about it. Thank you. Do it. Yes, do it. Do it.
So, according to the Kentucky law, the governor can appoint a replacement if Mitch McConnell retires until the next election. That's a key thing that I haven't figured out. Is it the next official election, or is it the end of the term? I believe it's the next election. The fact that Mitch McConnell is retiring in November means that no one can run against him. So that governor, now, to be clear,
slow down. Hang on, slow down. You're leaving it when it would be 2026 that his seat would come back up for election.
Well, it's only because of if Mitch McConnell.
Hang on, before you say anything, I just got to say this. This is the weird, crazy shit we all talk to offline. Paul and I went down a rabbit hole the other day, and this has some serious implications.
Yeah.
We don't know the answers yet. We're still trying to figure this out, but there might be some serious shenanigans at play here. So if you think Mitch McConnell's on the side of our constitutional republic, F no. I mean, that should have been clear and evident. For a long time, but there's some shenanigans potentially at play here. Continue, BCP.
Yeah, if he retires today, they could run someone in November. But he said he's retiring in November. That doesn't allow anyone to run, meaning the governor will appoint someone that will serve for 2 more years. But a clarification here: the governor does have to replace that retiring senator with someone from the same party. Now, you might say, oh, okay, that's fair. Look at Nikki Haley. Look at anybody. They could put anybody that's labeled a Republican. We're going to get a Mitch McConnell. This ensures a Mitch McConnell swamp replacement by doing this. Now, the Kentucky, local government is trying to make the people be able to vote on this, and they're trying to get it through. The governor's never going to approve it. So what we're going to get in Kentucky, I'm not in Kentucky, but what they're going to get in Kentucky and we're going to get in the United States is McConnell retires in November. An appointment is made in November as well. And then it will be a far leftist Republican, a swamp Republican, just like McConnell. We're not going to replace him. His retirement is not positive. It is going to result in the same stuff as we have right now.
And to that point, if he was truly a conservative, he would retire now and allow the system to be able to but your point, and this was what scared the shit out of me when you brought this up, and I hadn't thought about that, is what you just said. This is military maneuvering. This is outmaneuvering your enemy. You're going to get to the river or the ford or the crossroads. You're going to get there first and be able to set up your machine gun emplacements, landmines, all that stuff. This is not a good thing. No, in all fairness, Paul's actually BCP's doing the legwork. We're trying to figure this out. But if what we're seeing so far is this is a trap, man. This is a straight up setup by another swamp, which isn't a Republican, and neither is he a Democrat. This is, as Bongino calls it, and I like the word. This is part of the blob, whatever you want to call it. It's the blob. And that's what's going on here. And this is designed to destroy us and our country. And it really is effing scary. on that note
Yep.
right there. All right. Hey, we got somebody said good night. So let's just kind of wrap this up
Yep.
here. Redbeard, you bring it up. I'm going to throw one more post up here from one of our watchers, but I don't want to scare anybody, but think about what BCP is talking about. We don't have the answers yet. But BCP is doing some research, and I'm here to tell you, when he told me about it the other night, it freaked the shit out of me, because I can see it as we just got outmaneuvered, and we all think it's a great thing. Mitch McConnell needs to go. Yeah, damn right. But BCP is right. And if we understand that Kentucky constitutional law and how it works, dude, we're getting set up. We're going to have one. Well, look, I mean, I guess in reality, it's either Mitch McConnell or somebody just as bad as him. I mean, is that really? I guess that's a push, right? In a weird way, but it's not a victory for us, is what I'm saying. So many people are like, yeah, Mitch McConnell's going to go. Now they're just going to replace him with his doppelganger. That's all that's going to happen.
It could be worse. You have Brashear in there. It could be worse. I don't know how they elect that governor and then have 2 Republican senators, but whatever. Move on. Go ahead, Redbeard.
Yeah. Hey, I just want to give a quick, before you do it, Redbeard, I know you're going to say it, but I just want to say it personally as well. Thanks to Mike, Angry Viking, Learn Me Something. Why does my cursor not want to move this? So we had Mike, Angry Viking, Learn Me Something, and where are you? Zulu Inc. So thank you to everybody who is watching tonight, leaving us comments. That's what this is all about. And
y'all are awesome.
We're getting a little bit better at this under Redbeard's new way of doing things. And I actually adjusted my setup so I can actually see things a little better. I hope this was a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? Timely in my ability to respond. Because I'm looking here at the camera, and before the computer was way down here and then my mic was covering. Now I've actually got the computer elevated so I can see it, still look at the camera, still see it, and still respond, hopefully in a pretty good, a short period of time. So just thanks to everybody who watched it tonight, everybody who left a comment. And then my final plea before Redbeard takes us out on his just always gets my blood going. I love it. Outro. But hey, you got to stand up now more than ever. You really are the resistance. You have to start talking out loud. You have to rebel. You have to resist this urge to just roll over and say, yeah, whatever, and that was one of actually, these aren't my show notes. They're over here, but I had 2 other articles, which is what they want us to do. They want us just to roll over and just say, yeah, whatever. What's the point of fighting? That is part of the struggle that we're in right now. And that's what, unfortunately, a lot of people are succumbing to, is just giving up. This is not the time to give up, period. Now, more than ever, we cannot give up. You are the resistance.
That's right.
Redbeard, take us out, sir. We're at 2 hours. Hey, we're at 2 hours and 1 minute. Just kind of what you were hoping for.
Yeah. So look, I say this every single time. I know Mark gets a rise out of this, and I hope you all do too. But look, the flame of liberty shall not and will not ever be extinguished so long as there are good people that are willing to support and defend it. And that all starts with each and every one of you. And I'm hoping that as we go forth in this new cycle that we're doing, that we really find a way to highlight that. And you have to be a part of wanting to be that difference. You have to be a part of wanting to make that difference. And it starts within our communities.
You have to be the difference.
Yeah, you have to. You absolutely have to. And you got to work it from your communities. You got to get to know people. You got to build a good community. And I'm going to end us out on a Marcus Aurelius quote, which is, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. We have to be better than our enemies. We can't allow our morals and our humanity to be destroyed and to stoop as low as our enemies. We have to be the moral superiority here. And, that starts with education. It starts with understanding what your rights and liberties are. And we have to teach our children, because ultimately they're the ones that we're fighting for, not ourselves.
Damn right. Damn right. Oh, come on, man. You're not going to give us the flame of liberty? Dude, I love that.
Yeah, I did already.
Okay. Give us just one more little bit. Just give us one more little. Come on. I feel like you just kind of shorted us just a tad. I want a little bit more. I want a little bit more Redbeard here on the outro.
So I don't really know how to pronunciate this guy's name. Epictetus. I think is the guy's name. He's another Stoic philosopher, and he says, "Seek not the good in external things, but seek it within yourselves." And that factors into being that better person, being that difference that you want to see. I mean, you have to foment some type of change within yourself and ground yourself in a philosophy or a foundation in a basis that's going to help guide your actions, your thoughts, and your words, and ultimately how we deal with each other. We've got to find a sense of patience. We've got to find a sense of diplomacy, and not always resort to the weapon, but being trained in the weapon, being trained and understanding that there is going to arise a need to be that violent person, but that should be the last thing we go to. We should want to make peace and break bread before we grab our guns or our swords and take to the battlefield. So look, we as much as we want to make that change, we've got to be able to ferment that change within ourselves.
All right. That was well done, sir. All right, everybody. Thank you so very much to everybody who watched this podcast or who listened to this podcast. Thanks to everybody who left us comments. As always, thanks to the guys and gals who come on and join us. BCP, as always. I mean, thank you. Thanks to DB and his kid. And, you know, and again, just thanks to everybody leaving comments. And we'll see you next week. But remember, next week, it's Monday and Thursday, 1800 Central Standard Time, 1800 Central Standard Time, Monday and Thursday. That's going to be our new timeline going forward per Redbeard. And so it shall be written and so it shall be done. So that's what we're doing. And next week is Be the Difference Week. And Redbeard will tell you a little bit more about that in the intro next week. Everybody have a great weekend. Get out there, crush it, get some nature, some physical fitness, do whatever you have to do, enjoy it. And we'll see you guys again on Monday. Any final words from you guys, fellas?
That's all I got, brother.
All right. We'll see everybody next week. All right. Be good, everybody. Take care. All right. Stay safe.
Cheers.